So, may all beings attain the eloquence of the Buddha. This is the prayer of the Bodhisattva when seeing someone discuss the teachings. Okay? So, when the Buddha teaches, he's very eloquent. The Dharma itself is an eloquent topic, but the way the Buddha teaches is very eloquent because the Buddha has experienced the teachings. So, because sometimes we say, well, why should I meditate and work so hard to get realizations? I can just study the Dharma in the book and then teach it. Now, aside from the fact that you're not going to get out of samsara, aside from that fact, okay, still the teachings are not as effective if you don't practice them. Because when a bodhisattva practices them, and of course when a Buddha has really actualized them, the depth of their own realization comes out when they give the teachings. Yeah, and so that's why, when some people go to one of the public teachings of His Holiness, you see people in there, His Holiness walks in the room and he says hello and they start to cry, or or they listen to some teachings and the teachings become very, very powerful, even though, they may have heard the same topic before, and that's by the power of the person's realizations. Okay, and so, the eloquence comes through the power of the realizations. However, okay, that doesn't mean that when a person is not a good speaker, that they don't have realizations. Okay? And it doesn't mean that if a person is charismatic, they necessarily have realizations. Okay? So we have to be very, very careful here. Yeah? Because otherwise we can come to all sorts of funny conclusions, like, oh, that person is so charismatic, what they're teaching must be correct. Not necessarily. Or that person is so boring, or they don't know the right words to use, therefore they must not practice, or they don't understand the subject well. That also is not correct. Okay? In fact, one of our auxiliary bodhisattva vows is when you criticize a teacher for not being a good speaker and don't go to the teachings because you say, that person's not interesting and they're boring and they don't make me laugh enough and, I can't understand what they're saying, So thinking like that is detrimental to our own practice because we can lose out on something if we're just looking at the superficial way in which the teachings are being delivered. Okay? So of course it's better if we can be a good speaker and highly realized as well as everything. But just because we're not, or just because somebody isn't, doesn't mean they're not a good teacher. Okay? So this whole thing is really quite important, because sometimes we get quite confused. There might be somebody who is a good teacher for our friend, but we don't have karma with that person, and they're not a good teacher for us. Or there might be somebody who's a good teacher for us, but our friend can't understand them, not a good teacher for our friend. Okay? So we shouldn't get confused just because we and our friends may have different teachers or prefer different styles of teaching. Okay? Similarly, just like I was saying, just somebody might be a good speaker. They might make you laugh a lot. They might, I don't know, do so much. They might teach and you go, oh yeah, I get it, I get it. Now, whether you were really getting the right point or not, we don't know, but you feel like you're getting it, and so then, you think that teacher's wonderful, or a teacher explains something and you say, I don't get it, I don't get it, the teacher's awful, the teaching is awful, the whole thing stinks, Where all these kinds of opinions come from thinking that there's an objective external reality. You know, I mean, one of my teachers coughs all the time. You know, many people go to his teachings and they'll say, why doesn't that guy get elocution lessons? And they've actually tried to get him elocution. You know, why doesn't he go to the doctor and get rid of this cough? Yeah? And people will go and they'll say, I can't understand a word this guy is saying. He's muttering, you know, but he's actually a quite amazing teacher. Yeah? But if you don't have the karma, then you'd think, you know, who's this guy? Yeah? So, you know, we need to be careful. We can say, this isn't an appropriate teacher for me. Okay? But we can't say, that person's bad. Okay? Yeah. And similarly, you know, if we listen to a teaching and we understand it, we shouldn't necessarily conclude that we've understood everything 100% correctly. Okay? Because that's why you have, remember we have hearing, thinking, and meditating? That's why there's 3 of them. Okay? We don't just hear and think, oh, I heard, I get it. You know, we have to think about it. And in the class of thinking about it, that's when it comes to discussing things with our Dharma friends and why they do debate in the Tibetan monasteries. Okay? To make sure that what you've understood, you've actually understood correctly. Yeah? Because we can go on believing something for a really long time and then suddenly find out years later that we had misunderstood it to begin with. Okay? So this is why it's very important to hear teachings many times. Okay? And that's also why I think it can be helpful hearing them from different perspectives, and why it's so important to talk about the teachings with our Dharma friend. Okay? So that our understanding really gets refined. Mm-hmm.